What's going on, y'all? It's Mason Bleasdell, your Austin real estate agent, and today's gonna be a little bit different of a video. You joined me at one of my listings. We just finished shooting a little listing video, and I wanna make this video to address one of the most common questions that I am asked. People who are unsure about buying. Is the market gonna crash? Is this a terrible time to buy, etc.? Now, I am not gonna make this video to try to predict the future. They've been saying rate cuts are gonna happen every single Fed meeting for the last year and a half, and ta-da, still haven't happened. I'm not gonna try to predict the future, but in this video, I do wanna go over 4 genuine reasons as to why I honestly suggest some of you don't buy a house, and some of the biggest pitfalls that I've seen, because after selling over $100 million worth of real estate, I have seen some losers, I have seen some winners, and the fact of the matter is you cannot predict the future. I'm gonna give you kind of the 4 reasons why I don't think if you fit into any one of these, it may not be the right time to buy a house. Now, there's very specific nuances, I know, with every single case. Please don't take this as blanket advice, but I hope these are things to think about. That very first one is this has to be a long-term decision. No matter what price range of home you're buying in, truthfully speaking, the cost of buying, the cost of selling is not inexpensive. Now, in order to maximize that, buying a home really does need to be a 5 to 7 year minimum decision. Now, you and I, again, as we admitted in the beginning of the video, cannot predict the future. So if something comes up in 3 years, it is what it is and you deal with it. But really, if you're gonna buy a home, I really genuinely think that the plan should be that this is a 5 to 7 year home minimum. And I say that for a couple of reasons. Firstly, cost of buying, especially if you're using a mortgage when you buy your home. It's not a cheap process. You've got appraisals to pay for, you've got loan fees to pay for. Of course, you're pulling a whole bunch of stuff up front for miscellaneous HOA transfer fees and all these various things. Now, it's not incredibly expensive to buy, of course, you know, not counting your down payment. But as far as the actual fees go that go into not your down payment, it's not incredibly expensive, but you also have to consider the cost of selling. Then you have to consider the opportunity cost of if you rented a similar home to the one you're looking at buying. If it's a short-term decision and, you know, if you're in a market lull or even a market downturn, which happens. Austin saw one of the biggest upticks that we've ever seen in the history of Austin data. Now, we've had swings up before, and I can show you those over time. If you're curious, shoot me an email, and I can send you that data, but we don't know when those will be. We don't know when a COVID's gonna happen. We don't know when rates are gonna drop. All of those things are completely outside of our control. I don't want one of my buyers to bet on that happening in the short term. Now, that 5 to 7 years is our typical market cycle. Again, the data backs that up. So that 5 to 7 years would carry you through. You know, whether you did end up buying at a high, you know, things should level out hopefully within that time period. And if you happen to buy at a low, you'll really maximize it and it becomes a blessing, I guess, at that point. And if you're looking into the cost of selling, it is not inexpensive. You of course have real estate agent fees. And then, I mean, every single seller practically is being asked to pay for the title policy, being paid for a survey if needed. All those different things add up. Now, over that 5-7 years, the money that you would have quote unquote wasted putting it into just renting a house tends to outweigh the costs of that selling again on the back end. Of course, too, we hope for a little bit of appreciation in there as well. And again, that's when all these things tend to make sense. It's the biggest reason why, truly, if you are not thinking that this is gonna be a 5 to 7 year decision, I would honestly not recommend buying a house. Now, number 2 is a very personal kind of financial discussion that you need to have with you, your spouse, your family, whatever's going on this house to make sure that you're okay buying this house. Now, the fact of the matter is a VA loan, a first-time buyer, an FHA, all of you can get between 0 and 3.5% down as a minimum that would get you into a house. Now, I do work with a lot of people that do that, and I try to counsel them as best I possibly can just to be aware of the risks when it comes with buying a house. The house, for example, that we are filming this at right now was built in the 1980s. This home has been here for 40-something years now, and it's probably not going to just fall down tomorrow. However, check on the age of the air conditioner, especially if you're buying a resale home. Now, this one happens to be new. This home has been completely remodeled. But if you're looking at one that's got a 20 or 30-year-old air conditioner in some cases, an inspector is going to come in there and they're going to say right off the bat that even if it's functioning perfectly right now, it has completely reached its life expectancy, and that could cost you $8,000, $12,000, $15,000, depending on how big your house is to replace. We get hailstorms here in Austin. That is typically our most substantial natural disaster. If that wipes out your roof, that can be $8,000 to $15,000 to $20,000, depending on how big it is, what it's made of, all of those different things. And if your roof is older, your homeowner's insurance is not going to cover the full replacement value. They're going to depreciate it to what it's worth being 20 years old, like frankly happened to my house, when they write a tiny little check and we're stuck with the cost of getting that roof replaced at the end. Just make sure that's something you're budgeting for. So if you're putting 3%, 3.5%, or even 0% down, not a problem at all. As long as I tell people, have a house emergency fund, especially again, this is a calculated decision and something I work with my buyers on. Let's get to know AC, roof. Those are usually the two big ticket items. Let's get foundation checked out. Let's have your plumbing looked at. If you're an older home like this, are there any tree roots that might be near a sewer line? If your home's from the 60s and it has cast iron plumbing, it is notorious for failing over the years. When that happens, you've got to dig that whole thing out. That can be a $12,000 expense. You just don't fully know what you're getting yourself into, and knocking on wood, you're probably going to be just fine for many, many years to come. I just would especially advise have that little house emergency fund so you're okay. Now, if the dishwasher dies, a few $100 replaces it, not a big deal. And usually it's gonna be little things like that. Be prepared financially, make sure you're in a position to buy that. Just because you can get in for 3% down and we can negotiate to get the seller to pay for your closing costs, make sure that's not all the money that you have in case something pops up. Now, the number 3 thing, this is a new thing as of like 2023, 2024, people started throwing around the idea, mostly loan officers, marry the house, date the rate. Now, while I'm not completely against that, because in some sense it is true, it comes with the implied aspect that you should overbuy because a loan officer or Fed predictions or whatever are telling you that rates are going to come down. So even though it's a stretch right now, when rates drop, you can refi and get those costs down. That is BS, in my opinion. Don't trust it. This is coming from the same people that told you that rates are going to drop from the Fed meeting, every single one for the last year and a half. We don't know what that's going to turn into. Now, marry the house, date the rate is reasonable as long as that house is something you can afford. If it is comfortable for you financially, and if I can help guide you in that and run numbers and, crunch down, including taxes, insurance, everything that you should budget for, based on the number that you're comfortable with every month, that's fantastic. And if rates do drop, when I was selling homes 2018, 2019, right before COVID, rates were in the very high 4s, kind of low mid 5s. That's very normal. And I certainly hope that we get back to that number, range here soon. If that happens, refi and consider it a bonus. Then I would tell you to invest that extra money. But that's besides the point. Marry the house, date the rate is not necessarily bad financial, but please don't go into it with the assumption that you should overspend, quote unquote, be house poor in order that rates are gonna come down and I'm just gonna refi and then I'll be fine. Please buy a house that's within your financial comfort level and consider a refi a bonus if that ever happens. Now, the 4th thing I want to talk about in this is, despite all of the social norms, especially for people kind of in my life stage, and I imagine a lot of you watching, where you're starting off here in your career or you're getting along in it, maybe you've got a family now, and there's that stigma around renting a home, that you're not somehow successful or whatever because you don't own your home yet. There is no shame whatsoever in renting. If you're younger in your career, or if you're still figuring things out, or you're trying to get into that next job and you don't know that you're going to be in Austin for that next 5 to 7 years, it is okay to rent. I really would be confident in that first, because if you get into this home and you've got to sell 2 years later and that market's gone down a little bit and it's really hard to sell, or you married the house and dated the rate because it was a little bit of a stretch for you and you're not financially comfortable and now it's time to make a job change, or your spouse can no longer work, those kind of things. Don't get into trouble with that. Or maybe you're like that third example where you don't have that emergency fund for the house on top of the down payment for it yet, and you're wanting to rent to save some money to get all that together. There's absolutely no shame in renting. I truly want the buying experience for every single person that I work for to be smooth, exciting, breezy. I want you to be excited about furnishing the house and changing the wall color, not completely broke on the other end because you're worried that the air conditioner could break. Again, we can work on these things, and I'm going to coach all of my buyers through this process as we go. When I show a house, I'm looking for those kind of things that are going to cost my buyers money, not so much how the couch can fit. I want you to do that. I want you to make sure this feels like a home. I'll kind of be at the end and be like, all right, we got a 20-year-old air conditioner. We need to adjust appropriately for it. But that's what I'm there for. And I want this to be a good experience. There's no shame whatsoever in renting. If you fall into any kind of these four, whether it's the life change, whether it's the financials, don't have any shame in doing it. And if none of those seem to apply to you, if this is something you want to talk more about, or maybe you're right on that change where, okay, I am gonna stay in Austin, for example, and you wanna discuss what this might actually mean for you, for your situation, I would be honored to be the real estate agent to work for you in this. My personal contact details are on the screen and down below in the description. I sure hope this video was helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching it. I'll talk to y'all next time.